I'm going to relate to you a story. Now, I've thought about doing this for a while, and a couple of commenters have asked me if I would talk about HVAC in the day and so on. But I'm going to reach back quite a ways. And I'm going to tell you a story that my father told me. It was about my grandfather. Now, I was in HVAC. My father was in HVAC and steam. My grandfather was a steam man. And I'm going to kind of lay this out for you. Depression era, my grandfather was out of work, and he got a chance for a job. Now, it was a job on a bridge. Now, we're talking about Spokane, Washington. There's a rushing river right in the middle of downtown. It's called Spokane River. And they needed bridges across it, so they put bridges across it. Well, the Post Street Bridge was being built during the Depression, and they were putting the footings in for the bridge supports. And of course, the river's running around it, and they had to divert it, and all crazy things like that. But the problem they had was they would be building these forms for the concrete, and they're building them underwater, more or less. Well, forms are going to leak. The water's going to leak in there. So the problem they had was the crews would go home at night, they'd come back the next day, and there's like 3 feet of water in the forms. Well, then they got to get the water out of the forms before they can even get started on the work, and so it was just a pain. So they wanted to hire a guy to work overnight, 12 hours, to pump the water out of the form. And they used a little hand, a hand pump, had a big long lever on it, and it was a 2-piston pump that you'd pull back and forth like this. One would suck the chamber full, and the other one would push the water out the other chamber. And so you'd go like this all night long. Okay, that was his job. He'd come when everybody had gone home. Well, my grandfather was a steam man. And that's just bad, just manual labor. And let's see what we can do. And he assembled something there. And I better back up a little bit. I got a little more of setting to do. There was a Dutch oven. If you don't know what a Dutch oven is, it's a firebox. It's made out of bricks and stuff. And then there's a boiler on top of it. So the firebox, you'd fill it full of wood. This was wood at that time they used to fire it with. They'd fill it up and they'd light the wood on fire, and it would boil the water. And then they could operate equipment like jackhammers and the like, anything they needed power for. That was their power source, was steam. So that boiler is there. Now the boiler was hot overnight. They'd fill the firebox full of wood, and they'd cut down the combustion air so that it would keep the boiler kind of idling overnight. So the boiler would boil. And of course, it'd blow off the safety now and then. But they did not want it to get cold. If they left it cold, left it to put the fire out and came back 12 hours later, then they got an hour and a half to get steam back up. And they didn't want to waste that. So they banked the fire under that boiler every night. Well, my grandfather, being a steam man, and seeing that hand-operated pump is kind of saying, well, hold it, I don't really want to do this all night. And I could imagine, what your arm would look like after 12 hours of this. So he made what's called a steam jet or a steam siphon. And I'm going to give you a little demonstration of this and how it works. Nothing really complex here, but it'll kind of give you an idea of what he put together and how he solved this problem. Okay, here's our little steam jet. This is placed underwater. This is the outlet. I'm using air pressure here instead of a steam boiler, which, yeah, okay. And this is going to make a little jet that is going to go up there and draw water up here. Now, I'm not trying to explain exactly how this thing works. I'll do that in a further video if anybody wants it. But I will give you some ideas. Now you can see right here, this is where my air jet is going to come through. It's going to come right there. That's going to create a Venturi effect. When this pipe is on there like that, then that's going to reduce the area around here, and that's going to allow the vacuum to pull the water up. Now ideally, if these are well made, they will pull up 17 feet. This, I don't think it can go anywhere close to that because it's just made out of a few chunks of pipe. Probably, I'm trying to make it as similar to the one that my grandfather made as I can. Now here we have a bucket full of water. This is a vacuum pipe that's going to pull the water up. Now I'm going to turn on the air. This is going to make a tremendous amount of noise, so I'll probably have to voice over it later. Okay, you can see, you know, it's kind of making a fog out there, and that's pretty normal for something like this. Obviously, it isn't perfect. It isn't, you know, it doesn't have the right size nozzle and so on in it, but it will draw water up through that pipe. So obviously, you have steam hoses all over the place. I had a pile of pipe and pipe fittings sitting there. So he puts together this piping system for this steam jet, and he puts this steam jet assembly into the water that's starting to come into the forms. Well, it kept the forms dry all night. My grandfather goes to sleep. You know, he finds some place to sleep, and he sleeps all night rather than pumping that pump. Well, about an hour before the day crews came to start their work, he would disconnect the steam hose. He would take all the fittings apart, put them back in the pile, and when the crews came, here he was pumping. So why didn't he tell them about the steam jet? Because if he told them about the steam jet, he was out of a job, and he needed a job. So every night he did this. I think the job only lasted 2 or 3 weeks, but every night that's what he did, and he kept his job. And that's it on this one.